Well, hello and welcome to CERAWeek 2026. I'm Paul Markwell, and I'm here with Charlie Sanchez, who's president of, in Black Veatch, which is president of Infrastructure Advisory. Right?
Yep.
Great to have you here, Charlie.
Thank you.
And big story this week, of course, among other things, is the surging demand for power from AI and electrification. You're right in the middle of that. And how do you approach resolving this problem for your customers?
Yeah, so Black Veatch is a 111-year-old engineering and construction company as well as consulting company. And so we get to play across the entire asset lifecycle for these clients. We are highly specialized in the power space, in the water space, all of which plays a significant role in the data center narrative. And we're really helping them vision from the start, create the strategies, make the investment plans, acquire the assets that they need, digitize all of their systems, and frankly, engineer, construct, and operate across that life cycle. So we're really playing across that entire value chain for them.
The whole value chain. And I know that you're speaking, in fact, on a session here where you talk about system design and you talk about the grids as well. Are you thinking about this as like a whole system, presumably, end to end?
Absolutely. In fact, it's one of the things that I get sometimes a little concerned about. We tend to hear a lot about the need for additional supply, right? The generation. Not second guessing the importance of that, but I think there's equal, if not more important urgency that is associated with the grid. And so you hear a lot about the long interconnection queues. That's a first step in this narrative that is essential, because achieving 5.9 reliability at the size and scale that these data centers require is a complex problem that is hard to do behind the meter, and they'll all admit that to you. It's also essential that they consider the communities that they're part of and that they feed back supply into the marketplace. But you have to first solve that interconnection story, and that backlog is significant. Beyond that, there's transmission that needs to be built and needs to be modernized, and I hope we can talk about that a little bit more, but suffice it to say that can be an essential piece of the story. And then the distribution story. So at the actual location, the node on the network where the delivery must occur, it has to be robust enough. And so there's a lot to be done to engineer and design this stuff as one holistic system.
Right, and you're right, there is a lot of talk about behind the meter as if that's sort of, fixing it. But let's talk about the grid then a bit more, because you mentioned there are various elements of the grid. But what's really involved practically in upgrading the grid? What are the different steps and the different pieces that you have to work on?
Yeah, it's a great question. Clearly, there's a lot of work going on already across the entire country and across the globe as it relates to grid modernization. Some of that is hardware, right? It's the physical infrastructure that makes up the transmission lines and distribution lines, but it's also the soft pieces, and that starts with the instrumentation and controls that are on the infrastructure itself, but it proceeds into the digital capabilities behind it, right? So there's advanced distribution management systems, there's distributed energy resource management systems, there's automated meter insights and information that's being created. And all those things need to be the next generation, because if you go to what was done in the past, you simply don't have the level and speed of orchestration. And effectively, in order for us to assure that we can keep the balance of an intermittent supply story and an intermittent demand story, which is fluctuating, and keep the grid stable and reliable, we need to have sophistication that is next generation. And so we do all of those things for our clients, and it's an evolving space. But think about it as the type of sub-millisecond things that only AI can do, only digital enablement can do.
Digital enablement, AI, we'll talk about that. But just what you're describing, it strikes me as being a step up in complexity compared to what we used to have. Maybe with the data centers, is that really, you mentioned that has to be integrated to the grid, but is that in a way contributing as well to that extra complexity?
Yes, it is. We've been talking for a long time about intermittent supply because of renewables and the complexity that adds to really keeping stable networks across the electrification machine. And it is the most complex machine on the planet, very brittle, very sensitive. Some degrading of quality of the electrons, and you start to burn the system out, and you got to replace parts a lot. And so the data center narrative is also like that. So it has movement in demand that will shapeshift the way that the grid works, right? In so much as it's interconnected. And truth be told, they have to contribute to stabilization, not destabilization, right? And so stabilization by adding supply, but also being rapidly responsive at the moment where it's needed the most, and being able to, have flexibility in their demand as well as contribute to the overall supply.
Right. So it's really a full system problem. Let's talk about AI then. Where are the different areas where you see most impact from AI in that whole system?
Yeah. I've already mentioned, the importance of designing the system in an integrated way, right? So thinking about this interconnection, the transmission, distribution, all the way back to the generation, and thinking about it across multiple parties, right? One of the challenges is that, depending on who's making the decision, the utility itself, the data center itself, the system operator in the region, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So many different parties here who have a different vantage on the problem. So there's a prospect of doing things in a disconnected way. So we think about system design as being integrated. The best way to do that is the simulations that you can do with artificial intelligence. So planning with a mindset that thinks about all those variables and can trade them off. The other thing is really orchestrating. So we have a consortium that we started with a lot of our customers, a lot of tech companies, a lot of agencies, to do what is called total grid orchestration, to manage the balance and the trade-offs that must occur in real time. And so all that stuff is reliant on artificial intelligence to do more meaningfully.
So it creates that visibility. Is that what you would call like a digital twin, more or less?
It is.
Of the whole system?
That's exactly right.
You create that visibility for everybody, whichever stakeholder they are.
Yeah, and doing that as a simulation, but also doing it as a real-time operational factor. Yeah, exactly.
So you've got AI coming in, actually, obviously, by the sound of it, to control some of the operations. And then what about the challenges of doing that with the existing workforce and the existing systems? How do you overcome those?
Yeah, the beauty of the way the world works now is we're in an ecosystem mandate, right? So no single customer of ours expects us to show up alone. So if the engineering construction company doesn't have the prowess on some of the AI, or the utility itself, and we're quite privileged because I think we're well ahead of most in that AI space. But if some of the ecosystem doesn't, you can partner, right? And the folks who are leading the charge from the large AI companies or the startups, they're playing a significant role in this story. And so we have to create better alignment across those ecosystems.
Alignment, you mean like incentives, or how does that work?
Just a willingness to participate in a collaborative fashion, right? The metrics are shared. We're all in this for the same economic benefit, and there's a place for everyone. And to suggest that any single party has all the answers is a misguided notion, I'd say.
Right. Well, I think you've laid out very well. First of all, it's a complex system, but also there's some really exciting kind of ways of solving it. You've got all the partners. AI is one of your partners, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, well, it's great to have you here, Charlie. And we look forward to hearing more from you this week.
Yeah, likewise.
So thanks, Charlie, and thanks everyone for listening from CERAWeek 2026.